Ed or I said, well, what were you doing in Pittsburgh? And Henry kind of smiled his little smile and said, well, you're not going to like this.
3 years before his arrest, Henry Hill and Jimmy Burke were fixing basketball games at Boston College. Ironically, the team Ed McDonald used to play for.
I said, you know, you're completely nuts. I said, you got a real serious problem here.
Motherfucker almost leaped over the fucking table. He tried to grab me, but he went berserk.
Together, Burke and Hill had bribed 3 players to fix the results of basketball games, including starting center Rick Kuhn, who was dragged in front of the U.S. courts. With Kuhn and Hill's testimony, the FBI could finally bring Burke to trial. Burke was arrested. Suspected of murdering at least 50 people, the mastermind of the Lufthansa robbery would face trial on a seemingly innocuous gambling scam. And on the 27th of October 1981 began the U.S. versus Jimmy Burke.
The courtroom was packed with media, with organized crime figures, and with people who were interested in the case.
Henry Hill would once again have to take the stand, this time against his former mafia mentor.
I felt like a fucker. I mean, I had to look at him, you know, but I knew that this motherfucker ordered my death, you know what I mean?
Before the trial, the FBI played Hill wiretap evidence of Burke ordering his execution.
I didn't believe him, you know what I mean? And they played me the fucking tape. I mean, which they shouldn't have, you know what I mean? When a cocksucker ordered my death, you know what I mean? They'll whack him. I mean, you know, that's what it became, you know what I mean?
Henry was ruthless. I mean, he was a cornered rat. And while he might have been uncomfortable testifying against these people, he recognized that these people were looking to kill him.
I was able to look the cocksucker in the eye, you know what I mean? I said, Jimmy, you didn't get me, motherfucker. You know, I got you.
Jimmy Burke was convicted and would spend the rest of his life in prison.
At the end, I was just, you know, disposable. I was just, you know, they were gonna kill me.
Hill's testimony would be equally damaging to Paul Vario, on trial for extortion at Kennedy Airport.
Put his fucking head down. You know, fuck you, we didn't kill you, you cocksucker. You got us. Yeah, I got you. Motherfucker, you know, you got my wife and my fucking kids, motherfucker. You know what I mean? I knew what they were capable of. You know, I mean, I seen it all my life growing up.
Henry's testimony helped convict Paul Vario. He was sentenced to a total of 12.5 years in Pittsburgh Federal Penitentiary. Behind bars, Jimmy Burke organized a relentless campaign to have Hill found and executed.
He would have been just mutilated for what he had done.
Henry Hill would spend the next 25 years running for his life. In 1980, Henry Hill became a government informant, betraying his childhood friends Jimmy Burke and Paul Vario, condemning them to spend the rest of their lives behind bars.
I beat them to the punch. You know what I mean? I did.
Burke had issued a multi-million-dollar contract on Henry Hill's life. There would be plenty of takers.
They were gonna kill me. Or kill my wife, or kill my kids, or, you know, I mean, anything to get to me.
They would all love to make their bones killing Henry Hill.
Henry Hill had been secretly moved to Omaha, Nebraska, and placed in the witness protection program to safeguard him from mafia reprisals.
They looked out for me. I mean, they knew what the fuck it was. It was a big fucking deal back in 1980, you know. Being a rat, you know, I mean, I was the first fucking guy, you know.
He was clearly in a great deal of danger. His family was in a great deal of danger.
In 1981, through a government informant, the FBI received the news they had been dreading. Burke was closing in.
Burke had somebody that told him where Henry was allegedly at. They notified us and we don't take chances. We moved him out.
Phone rang. Show some clothes in your fucking bag, we'll be there. We're outside right now.
I believe he had about 24 hours.
Gotta go.
Throughout the 80s, Hill and his family were moved repeatedly by the US government. the threat of mafia execution was ever present.
He was in a great deal of danger, and this contributed in many ways to his alcoholism and his drug addiction.
He became highly addicted to cocaine and heroin and you name it.
And Henry's drug addiction was about to lead him into the arms of the mafia. In the mid-1980s, Henry Hill had been moved to Washington. With a serious addiction and mounting debts, he returned to his life of narcotics dealing. And in Washington, Hill fell foul of an undercover police sting.
I knew the guy was a fucking cop the minute I met him. You know what I mean? He was a fucking agent. I knew it. And I couldn't convince these other fucking assholes, and they dealt with him. I got popped.
Henry Hill was arrested on narcotics charges. Worse still, he had lost his witness protection status through 7 years of continually breaking every rule in the program.
The witness protection program failed, in my view, for Henry because Henry is a weak person. He wasn't able to discipline himself and to change his life.
Passing bad checks and calling home back to New York, which was a no-no. That was forbidden.
Don't use the phone. Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? Fuck out of here.
It's not so much that the program failed Henry as that Henry failed himself. And his usefulness for the government at that point was pretty much at an end.
He had already given up everything he had to offer to negotiate. He had nothing left.
It was a strong case. He went to trial. He was convicted.
Things couldn't have been worse for Hill. Awaiting sentencing, he was sent to Terminal Island in California, a prison populated with mafia inmates.
When he arrived, he found out that there were members of the East Coast Mafia who knew who he was and what he had done to their guys back east.
They were doing time there, They were doing life sentences and fucking 20 years and all this other fucking shit. Well, they tried to kill me.
2 attempts were made on Hill's life. And though his usefulness to the government was over, Ed McDonald came to his rescue one last time.
I wrote a letter because I thought it was only fair to talk about the convictions and the cases that he had contributed to. The judge waved the letter in front of the prosecutor and said that because of what Henry had done and because of the pressures that he was under, he was going to sentence him to a probationary sentence.
I had to do another year in drug rehab, and they sent me to this fucking, place where I, supposedly got rehabilitated.
Finally, Hill received some good news. Wise Guy, his autobiography co-written with Nick Pileggi, was to be made into a Hollywood movie.
Scorsese called me. He wants to do the movie. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah. He's gonna give you $500,000. I say, okay. Another fucking payday, I mean, seriously, $500,000.
Henry had to work hard for his money. Robert De Niro constantly phoned him for advice on how to perfect his portrayal of Jimmy Burke, ironically the man who wanted Henry dead.
He's on the fucking phone constantly. I mean, like fucking 7-8 times a day. He wouldn't leave his fucking trailer without talking to me twice. Jimmy needed it. How did Jimmy hold a cigarette? I thought he was a fucking nut job.
When filming had finished and De Niro had left Henry alone, he was smuggled onto the Warner Brothers lot for a secret screening of Goodfellas.
I mean, how could you imagine yourself, on a fucking big silver screen, you know what I mean? And it was me, you know what I mean? This fucking kid nailed it. I had a lot of fun. I had, a lot of money and all that fucking, insane fucking shit. But yet, at the end of the fucking night, I slept with a pistol in my fucking pillow.
Throughout the making of Goodfellas, the threats on Hill's life and his life on the run continued. But the main threat ended on the 13th of April 1996, when Jimmy Burke died of lung cancer in prison.
It was a fucking relief, you know what I mean? And the same with Paulie when he died. You know what I mean? It was a fucking relief because I knew, well, Paulie I knew wouldn't kill me, you know what I mean? Paulie wouldn't have killed me. But I knew Jimmy, on his fucking deathbed, I'm sure that he said, make sure you get fucking Henry. You know what I mean? I knew Jimmy.
When Burke died, that was the end of the fear of New York. But that was far from the end of his problems.
Today, Henry Hill lives in the Midwest. He and Karen are divorced. The money from Goodfellas is spent and he makes a living as a chef in a small Italian restaurant.
For the most part, he never breaks a promise unless it has to do with alcohol. And if it has to do with alcohol, he'll break it.
I'll say this to this fucking moment. I mean, you know, I don't like being sober. I don't.
I've heard him that many times. All I really want to be from here on out is the best damn drunk in the world.
He is plagued by his addictions and haunted by his former life.
Living a lifestyle where he lived by a code and broke it, I'm sure came into it.
He also continues his life of crime.
This last deal, he goes through the security at the airport with drugs in his carry-on bag. I mean, how dumb is that?
I think what you see of Henry today is what you'll see of him the rest of his life. He'll be in and out of trouble. I don't believe he can ever turn his back on it.
Is it possible that Henry will find redemption and walk the straight and narrow? You know, stranger things have happened. He's getting near the end now, and it's quite possible that as he looks at his final days, he might get religion, but I wouldn't bet on it.
I'm on borrowed time, and I'm happy. You know, I am, believe it or not. I mean, as fucking sick as it sounds, you know, and as fucked up as my life was and is going to be, you know, probably the fucking day I die. But I don't hurt nobody anymore, you know what I mean? And I don't hurt. And they played me the fucking tape. I mean, in which they shouldn't have, you know what I mean? When a cocksucker ordered my death, you know what I mean? They'll whack him. I mean, you know, that's what it became, you know what I mean?
Henry was ruthless. I mean, he was a cornered rat. And while he might have been uncomfortable testing...
Over the fucking table. He tried to grab me, but he went berserk.
Together, Burke and Hill had bribed 3 players to fix the results of basketball games, including starting center Rick Kuhn, who was dragged in front of the US courts. With Kuhn and Hill's testimony, the FBI could finally bring Burke to trial. Burke was arrested. Suspected of murdering at least 50 people, the mastermind of the Lufthansa robbery would face trial on a seemingly innocuous gambling scam. And on the 27th of October 1981 began the US versus Jimmy Burke.
The courtroom was packed with media, with organized crime figures, and with people who were interested in the case.
Henry Hill would once again have to take the stand, this time against his former mafia mentor.
I felt like a fucker. I mean, I had to look at him, you know, but I knew that this motherfucker ordered my death, you know what I mean?
Before the trial, the FBI played Hill wiretap evidence of Burke ordering his execution.
I didn't believe him, you know what I mean?
Ed or I said, well, what were you doing in Pittsburgh? And Henry kind of smiled his little smile and said, well, you're not going to like this.
3 years before his arrest, Henry Hill and Jimmy Burke were fixing basketball games at Boston College. Ironically, the team Ed McDonald used to play for.
I said, you know, you're completely nuts. I said, you got a real serious problem here.
Motherfucker almost leaped over